This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.
Contemporary Islam, we speak about honoring the Mother's Day of Resistance. The word resistance, no, it's absolutely not a word for our time only. And we need to not see this word in a, let's say, a very parochial sense. It has been passed down through generations, and women who found themselves caught in a world of oppression continue and continued to resist. Resistance means no, absolutely not in our name. And as mothers, we have voices. But in a world so divided, what would it mean to honor the Mother's Day resistance? To help us to understand this, we have on the line with us women's rights activist, student and teacher of Humanology, Sister Magboeba Davids. Assalamu alaikum, Auntie Magboeba. Hope you are well and Jummah Mubarak.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Gadija. Shukran for having me on this Mubarak day. And assalamu alaikum to our respected listeners. We thank really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to have this conversation on this Mubarak day of Jumu'ah, which is such a special day, on our calendar, a day of gathering, a day when we celebrate the power of Jamaat, when we celebrate the social order of Islam, a divine platform where we can actually address and find the solutions for all our man-made problems. It's also a day of collective niyyah, and collective purification, and also a collective consciousness, and also the salah in Jamaat, when we're standing shoulder to shoulder, which is a show of discipline, and also a show of brotherhood, and also hearts in alignment. And there should be actually, what we learn from our Jumu'ah, actually, Sister Gadija, is there should be no social disorder in Islam. And therefore, we bless this day of Jumu'ah, our weekly gathering of the Ummah, coming together for our weekly spiritual nourishment, alhamdulillah. So, honoring our mothers of resistance, a topic so close to my heart, Sister Gadija, as you know.
Absolutely. I wanted to say, you know what, it's a word that just resonates with so many of us. And when I say this, one doesn't necessarily have to be a mother in the purely, the purely parochial sense, and having to have given birth. Because the idea of being a woman in and of itself, and what that conjures up, and so again, when we see these different manifestations and these, let's say, the horrors that some mothers have to face, that yes, of course, it's incredibly important for us to unpack it in this way. And perhaps we can start off, Sister Magboeba, with speaking about what Quran and Sunnah says about mothers.
Yeah, that's the intention, Sister Gadija, because Quran is always our premise from which we actually speak, or we take our guidance from. So before I actually go really into the discussions with regards to the concept of motherhood, sometimes we do have this understanding that moms, like we just mentioned earlier, we are just housewives, But then the Quran actually speaks about the ummi, actually meaning mother. So here we learn about the ummi of Musa, the mother of Musa. And here we learn about whatever derives from this particular root word And what we learn here is what we get from the root is also imam, which means leader, and also ummah, which actually means nation. So, and in fact, it has various other meanings, which also can translate into being a pillar or a foundation. And so who are we without our mothers? Allahu Akbar. It also, the word also amam also stems from the root word. That means also the front. So here we learn that indeed mothers are at the front of everything, and they are the leaders who build and nurture nations. So actually you put motherhood actually in a different realm. You know what I mean? It's a Quranic understanding and not what we actually determine ourselves as being just, housewives. That is actually, I think, a very derogative word that we have become accustomed to. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually holds women in a very high regard, and the status is mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, as we know. And Allah reminds mankind, humankind, not Muslims or Christians, but humankind, to revere Allah and that of the womb. So every girl child that's born must be revered as she is a potential mother, because she has been blessed with a womb, which is a portal, the portal through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates. And therefore it carries the same attribute of rahmah. So Allah reminds us also that I am forever watching. I am watching. I'm watching humanity, what you are actually doing to the womb. Do you have taqwa towards the womb? So today, in light of what's happening in the world today, Sister Gadija, especially wherever we find oppression, we find a total disregard for women. So it was actually very difficult to celebrate Mother's Day this year. The reason is because she plays such a vital role within society. She is actually our foundation. And I think women also need to understand also, Sister Gadija, of their particular value as well. We are the foundation of society. And women and mothers we are not economic minors in Islam, or being seen as economic minors. No revolution can really succeed without the participation of women. And therefore, her education is so key. Her social awareness is vital. Her knowledge and her understanding of the condition of her society is of utmost importance. So here, I'm just going to mention a hadith that I live by, or try to live by, is that the condition of society is determined by the consciousness of its women. So what we learn here is that give me educated mothers and I shall give you a civilized society. Because an uneducated mother can love her children very dearly, but she cannot provide them with mental stimulation. So let's talk about the mothers of resistance, Sister Gadija. Let's pay tribute to them. Let's honor and let's remember them on this day of Jumu'ah. Because, we have beautiful scriptural stories of amazing examples of our ancestral mothers. Even our local history as well are filled with such examples. And mothers who actually went beyond their primary duty of raising children and building families and stood up against the oppressors of their time. So we're talking about resilience, we talk about resistance. And I remember, and I'm sure just to reflect upon our South African history of 1956, when those 20,000 women actually, from different denominations, they organized themselves. Some were their babies on their backs, protesting against the apartheid regime, opposing the past laws that were oppressing them. And we can still remember that particular slogan. We would say that now you have touched a woman, you have struck a rock. You have dislodged a boulder and you will be crushed. So these were the strong sentiments from women and the voices of women standing up and resisting the apartheid regime, who were really at the head of the oppression of that particular time. And these mass campaigns actually just started, I think it was from 1913 to 1959. Now, some of us might not have been born by that, during that particular time, but it is good to reflect upon that. So we are not excluding also the women who were justly incarcerated and banned and forced into exile. So we have a proud history of women, a proud history of mothers who did extraordinary things, resisting the system of their time. So what we need to understand where we find ourselves today, Gadija and the listeners, our democracy did not come to us on a platter. It was because of the resistance of brave, courageous men and women who actually loved justice, who made the maximum or the ultimate sacrifices to bring about liberation. So, yes, we're not there yet, we're not liberated yet, but we cannot really allow their blood really to have fallen in vain. And that's why South Africa could recognize of what was happening in Gaza. We can actually relate to it because the resistance is actually in our genes, isn't it? We have had an experience of it. We lived it, right? And that's why we could take the necessary action by taking Israel to the ICJ. So coming back to the Palestinian issue, the mothers of Gaza who have shown the world how to resist. And these images, like you earlier said, that we see every day, mothers who lose children, not able to breastfeed them because they themselves are malnourished. the state of Israel, then what we learn about Mother's Day, now talking about Mother's Day, how the state of Israel has painted Mother's Day with blood. So Israel has decimated the boundaries of international humanitarian laws, and women and children are paying the price and are still paying the price. So I just need to mention, yes, Sister Gadija, but just also as a reminder and a reminder to myself, mothers, we know how we feel when we are pregnant, when we are with child, right? The pregnancy, the awaiting of a child to be born. Yet these mothers being pregnant and have to give birth without any anesthetic or no access to basic needs and medical care, and mothers who care for sick children without functioning health facilities, mothers without postpartum medical care. So these pictures, and we feel this as mothers because we know we have journeyed through that particular, the labor pains, didn't we? Didn't we experience also giving birth? And also now to have to give birth under these type of conditions. So the world is a witness to how mothers are tuning. What we are seeing today is how they are how these mothers have turned their fear into faith. Now, where do they get this resilience from, Sister Gadija? Like we earlier mentioned that, the female energy. If you study the female energy, the feminine energy, that, it is what I feel in my heart of hearts, and I think it is so, because the generations and generations of female energy passing down, even before 1948.
Yeah.
Because we know that Al-Quds, the people of Al-Quds, it is a blessed land. The land that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed. So if the land is blessed, then the people is also blessed. Right? So when we look into the history of the Bani Israel and what they had to endure under Roman rule, and when we look at also what they and if you look also at the scriptural story, and I want to mention this particular story this morning, Sister Gadija,
Yes.
because of women being conscious of their social conditions. And I want to mention this particular lady. Her name is not mentioned in the Quran, but she's named as the mother of Maryam. The mother of Maryam. And if you look at the Bible, her name is Hannah. And this woman, for me, she really stands out for me, because if it was not for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Quran, we would not have known about her. We would not have known the silent dua that she made to Allah. But also being so aware of her social conditions and the corruption and the oppression of her time, that the dua that she made, because she was already a matured woman and being barren most of all of her life, she made this appeal to Allah to grant her a child. Now she was already, like, as scripture or as the history says, she was already postmenopausal, right?
Yeah.
And having made this dua and speaking to Allah and say to Allah, "Oh Allah, grant me a child, grant me a child," even and this, because she said, "Whatever is in my womb, I will offer as a service to my people."
Wow.
Now this is the desperation of a woman. What else does she have to give? And she knows the condition, and that oppression is generational. Right? So she was aware of, that's why it's so important for us to be so aware of our social conditions, and how do we respond to that? Do we just sort of accept it? But then we learn also that the resilience, and a woman like Ummah, she doesn't only feel for her own children, she feels for the Ummah, right? So she's always concerned about also society. She's concerned about society. And she was aware of the corruption of the rabbis, who actually, during her particular time, who occupied the temples, right? And she asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever if you grant me this child, I can only offer what is in my womb. And then she was, in her thoughts or in her mind, she thought that Allah Ta'ala will grant her a son, because it's only the men that could actually enter the temples. right? And there Allah Ta'ala's wisdom, where Allah Ta'ala granted her a girl child. But then because she was a believing woman, she actually consoled herself by saying, "Oh Allah, neither is the male like the female." But then look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan was greater, because the people were not really ready for the Messiah, the Masih. So even Zakaria also now was inspired by her dua. And because he was also in his old age, and he was also yearning for an heir or offspring, or somebody that will continue and in this line of be Khalifatullah, of be a leader to people. And Allah Ta'ala also accepted his dua. So his dua actually came through via Yahya.
Yeah.
So Yahya was born, and as we know the story, Allah said to him, "Name him Yahya." Yeah. So here we learn that Yahya was the precursor to Nabi Isa alayhi salam. So so we learn here that our dua and the way we see things, the way we want to do in our own time, we want to have results. But Allah Ta'ala we know Allah Ta'ala has, with His infinite wisdom, He has, Allah Ta'ala has, we cannot measure ourselves or our limited understanding to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's infinite wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now Yahya was the precursor, and then through Maryam alayhi salam, how Maryam as this young girl, that she could actually enter the temple and be protected by her uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she was this pure lady. And whereas women, in the place where women were also oppressed and children were also killed, Allah Ta'ala elevated her to being like you actually the woman who actually supersedes all women of all nations. Now look at that, Sister Khadija. And we just need to really, if you look at what is happening in Gaza, because they come from the same lineage, the same progeny. So those people are the blessed people. And look what is happening, Sister Khadija.
Mm.
And I think that's why the onslaught on the mothers and the children is so vicious. It's because of that truth, the world doesn't want to recognize that particular truth.
Yeah. We are going into the second half of our Contemporary Islam segment this morning, speaking to Sister Magboeba Davids. She is a women's rights activist. She's also a student and teacher of Humanology, and today unpacking the topic, honoring the Mother's Day of Resistance. Sister Magboeba, it was so beautiful, this particular saying that you quoted me, that we said that the condition of society is determined by the consciousness of the women, and you continued in that vein to unpack for us, beautiful story around that.
Yeah, Sister Khadija, we cannot really know because Surah An-Nisa actually, Sister Khadija, guides us. If you look at Surah An-Nisa, it speaks about the social conditions and women. Why is social justice mentioned so many times in Surah An-Nisa? Because when we are the ones that carry life, Sister Khadija, and if our society is not, if we feel insecure within our environment, it actually impacts on the child that we carry, because the child actually in our wombs, it lies under our hearts. So when the mother's heart is anxious, when it's full of anxiety, the baby actually, it impacts on the child. Right? So that's why Allah Ta'ala speaks to us about oppression and to stop oppression wherever we might find it, especially in Surah An-Nisa. Because of that, because oppression actually, it has impact, or it affects the unborn, it affects the living and the dead. So that is what Surah An-Nisa actually teaches us also, and the caring for the orphan. Right? And also the multiple marriages that's allowed. So that means the multiple marriages is also for women to be cared for. It's in support of women, right? So that they can actually find a secured home and raise their children in a safe environment, right? So here we learn that Allah's wisdom in Surah An-Nisa, and why so many verses is mentioned about justice in Surah An-Nisa. So now we learn the importance of us as women, especially now also in South Africa, wherever we find ourselves, to be conscious of our society, of our social conditions, of our environment, because we raise our children and they have to enter into the environment.
Yeah.
They will be impacted, either negatively or positively, isn't it? So if society isn't clean, our children will be affected, right? So being on this path of our journey, also as speaking out against everything that's oppressive, where sometimes you wonder, where do we find the strength to carry on, Sister Gadija? Because the answer is not there tomorrow, right? But it's an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing striving to bring about justice, right? So it's where do we find the strength? Where does these women of Palestine, and ever you find oppression and women find themselves resisting with all that they have, it's because our foremothers experienced it. And our because and sometimes we do feel alone in this particular field, but then yes, where we feel our foremothers actually living in ourselves. They're actually living in our DNA, and they are there to help us. So that is also another motivation for us as women, that we are not alone in this thing, right? We find this energy to carry on, to continue, right? So, like I earlier said, the land of our Quds, the blessed land, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed. And why is our yearning so much towards this to liberate this particular place, and how the world has woken up because of the resilience of these people. It is because it has touched our fitrah. And because our fitrah has been violated, that's why the world is so angry, Sister Gadija, and willing to do the necessary to stop the aggression. But that will only happen in Allah's time. But the more it continues, the more the world is waking up. Right? So yeah, we need to really, that's why we need to honor these women and whoever's actually a victim, I would say, really, or a statistic of what is happening in Gaza. How they have awakened the world. People who really never had an interest in Islam, and also what is also happening, Sister Gadija, the truth of Nabi Isa is also coming to light. The history of Nabi Isa, because he's a Palestinian. He was born under oppression. He was sent there to liberate the people. Right? So here we learn the beautiful stories and people coming into South Africa and teaching us about, that we are just one ummah. And we feel for one another. And what the aggressor actually, his heart has gone cold. There is no feeling, there is no mercy. Right? But Allah Ta'ala will deal with them. Allah Ta'ala will deal with them through the Mujahideen who's fighting in the front lines. So yeah, we need to really honor all those who are, the role players in this. And each and every one of us have become a role player. So we also are resisting in our own way.
Yeah.
If it is dua, it's through teaching, it is through educating, it is through protesting, it is through, I think everybody is just like, on the roll.
Yeah.
So what the Palestinians have gifted us with a desire to strengthen our relationship with the Almighty. And I found this clip on my phone this morning. So I'm thanking this person who sent me this Juma Mubarak message. And I thought I would like to end off with this, really, Sister Gadija, because it says that the people of Palestine have gifted us with a desire to strengthen our relationship with the Almighty by showing us their unwavering faith. And this is one of the greatest gifts we could be given. So look at the positive side of resilience, Sister Gadija, because they understand martyrdom. They understand that life doesn't end here. Right? So I would say it's a win-win situation. Right? So those people are the people of Palestine, our mothers, they have already passed the test. We are on trial. The Ummah is on trial because they have already decided. They have decided we're not going anywhere else. We're standing our ground. So we are actually on trial. The Ummah is on trial, and we can see the people, how Allah Ta'ala is dividing people. Those who are the fence-sitters, those who are for Palestine, those who are against Palestine. So this is the gift that they have given us. Allahu Akbar. So what the dua is also, let our closest companions be our iman, to strengthen our iman, to this concept of sabr and tawakkul and shukr, and also to remain on the path of seeking the knowledge, inshallah.
Yeah.
That is our the lesson that we can draw, and we say we really truly honor, sincerely honor our mothers of resistance. It is what we need to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
That is our really, Allah Ta'ala is almost like pushing us in that particular direction, forcing us in that particular direction, but having chosen the best of people to do that.
I think what's so interesting is when I listen to you, Auntie Magboeba, then how mothers. So if we look at the topic and we think about this idea of honoring the Mother's Day of Resistance. So when we think about the varied manifestations of a mother, and so yes, with who gives birth, and so these almost stereotypical images of the mother being soft and gentle and compassionate and kind and feeding her child and seeing to her, but associated with gentleness, associated with vulnerabilities, those types of characteristics. And then you think of this term resistance, and one thinks about it as very assertive, domineering, speaking up. But as you say, and so again, what I'm finding, what's implied throughout what you are saying is that even these various manifestations of resistance. So if one thinks about resistance in its narrowest form, and you think about really asserting your voice and being and in so many ways, trying to make your point against, in this case, when we're speaking out against injustice. But yes, again, how resistance can also be in the form of teaching your children, for example, or those around there, imparting knowledge around what one ought to be, around one's values, around one's beliefs, and of course underpinned by the ideas of justice.
Yeah, because if you listen to the voices of the children, Sister Gadija, of Gaza, they speak like adults. They speak like people who have had a lifetime of experience. Yeah. So where did they get that from? From their mothers. I think I said that on a program once, that they've actually sort of they were nourished by the milk of jihad. Now that is the power of a mother. We give birth, Sister Gadija, and labor pains are labor pains. Don't we give birth?
Yeah.
Why did Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam had to go through the labor pains? And then she said, oh Allah, I wish I was dead. No, look at the strength that women has, that soft strength that we have. And Allah says, touch the palm tree, shake the palm tree. Now, if you shake the palm tree, Sister Gadija, you actually need 10 men to shake that palm tree, isn't it? It is a fully grown, fruit-bearing tree. So these stories in the Quran is so amazing, Sister Gadija. If we just connect ourselves to these, why Allah Ta'ala has given us these scriptural stories of our ancestral mothers. Look at the heart of Musa's mother, the inner heart of Musa's mother, for to have given birth under also insecurity, heightened insecurity. But Allah Ta'ala comforted her heart. Yeah.
But I think also what's so beautiful about that, so when we look at resistance, as I said, in its varied manifestations and by women, and we look at what is happening globally, of course, and with particular reference to what we're seeing now happening in Palestine, and mothers sitting with their dismembered children or furiously digging in the rubble to find their children, or running into hospitals with their children bleeding, etc. But as you say, the words that fall from their mouths, and then if you think about locally the role that women have played within resistant movements, within liberation movements, and yes, I suppose just alerting us or reminding us, of our own power. As mothers, and yes, around how important educating is, and that again the idea of resistance coming in varied forms. So perhaps maybe just in our last few minutes, I think we have about 2 minutes left, Auntie Magboeba, just also then your advices for us, as women that's living in the world that we see that's fraught with injustice, our society, our community. We see so much that is happening. And so perhaps just your advices with regards to that.
Oh, Sister Gadija, I just feel that we need to be, you meet people, you socialize with people, you interact with women. Our unity is so important because Allah says together as women. Why do Allah says 4 women or 2 women to 1 man? Together we are strong, together. So it's important for us to, as women, also to unite and to strengthen each other. Because only women can know what it is to give birth. We can support each other, we support each other in those motherly things, So it is important for us to support and to strengthen each other, really to, and guide each other and educate one another, and for us to be able to pass on the baton. We're not going to be here forever. So we need the education is so important because we need to pass on the baton and not allow the women or even the men that we raise to drop the baton. That is, I think, the important thing for us.
Yeah.
Sister Gadija.
May Allah grant
because we
us all
cannot
the
really, because we cannot fight the enemy or the resistance through being ignorant.
Yeah.
You need to know, you need to understand, you need to be aware. Right?
Yeah.
So that I think is crucial because you cannot bring about social transformation being in a state of jahiliyyah.
Yeah.
So Hamas didn't come along yesterday. It was through the years that they were groomed and they were trained and they were disciplined. Isn't it? It didn't come overnight. It didn't come overnight. Because
Exactly.
for a soldier to go to battle who have already decided to die, you cannot kill him. Right? Is it?
Yeah,
he has
of
already
course.
decided.
Yeah.
So
and
that
seeing the
concept of
value in
martyrdom,
it,
Sister Gadija, it has become a culture in Gaza.
Yeah.
I've been to Iraq. You speak to mothers. You meet them in the lift. They will tell you, I've offered 2 sons to the resistance.
Yeah.
They will proudly say it.
Yeah.
They will proudly say it.
Exactly
without
why
not
I
even
said
knowing
earlier on.
each other.
Exactly why I said earlier on, and unfortunately we have to end it off now. But exactly that why when I said earlier on this idea when one thinks about the mother, yes, and of course we want to protect and we want to nurture, but then also mothers in spaces like that who and for lack of a better term, but who celebrate. The fact that that their children have been martyred. And so it's almost like that is somehow, it conflicts in our head because for us, motherhood should be about, then one should cry. Of course, and they do. But this is when it's rooted or when your iman is at that level of strength. Shukran so much for joining us this morning, Sister Magboeba. Juma Mubarak to you and yours, and inshallah until we speak again. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. Juma Mubarak to the Ummah of Resistance.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. I want to conclude with the following piece and really sort of speaking to what Auntie Magboeba was saying now about the women before us. So it says it is not just your mother who may walk with you in spirit, it is her mother too, and her mother's mother, and her mother's friends who loved by choice and not blood, and the women before them. Generations and generations of female energy watching in admiration as you forge ahead, living better, feeling better, accepting better than they ever did, as they were much hoped you would. So when you feel low, lonely or unloved, remember them, feel them. They are with you and they burn brightly with their boundless light in everything you do. You, my friends, are the moment in time of many women gone before, and you will lay pathways like they did for those who come up next. What a beautiful, unending legacy.
This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.